Hey everyone, we're going to conduct some Nvidia stock analysis here. Specifically, we're going to look at three things that I think every Nvidia stock investor should know. Firstly, we're going to talk about Nvidia's research and development spending and how it's increasing that to meet the growing customer demand. Secondly, I'm going to talk about Nvidia's dividend increase and why investors can expect Nvidia to continue increasing its dividend. And relatedly, finally, I'm going to talk about Nvidia's stock repurchases and, for similar reasons, why investors can expect Nvidia to continue increasing their share buybacks. So let's take a look at the details.
I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/Parkev for the 10 best stocks to buy now.
All right, so on research and development in the 3 months that ended April 28th for Nvidia, the company spent $2.72 billion on research and development, and that was just 10.4% of revenue, which was down from 26% of revenue in the same quarter the prior year. However, the company did increase the R&D spend by 45% year over year. You notice that it increased from 1.875 billion up to 2.7 billion. But because revenue increased by so much more than what R&D increased, the percentage of revenue that they spent on research and development decreased meaningfully year over year. Now, that wasn't on purpose. Nvidia and most companies of Nvidia's size like to keep research and development as a relatively stable percentage of revenue, meaning they don't want research and development spending as a percentage of revenue to fluctuate as much as it had in this recent year-over-year difference. Well, that wasn't Nvidia's fault. Revenue increased by so much, it caught Nvidia sort of off guard, but even if they knew about it, it would be difficult to maintain research and development spending as a percentage of revenue when revenue is growing by so much, because it would be wasteful. It's hard to increase spending on a certain category by that magnitude because it would be wasteful. It would be hard to hire so many people all at once. You may not have the space for all of those people. You may need to hire, or you may need to add more office space. You may need to hire additional managers. You may need to hire additional human resource employees to digest all of the new acquisitions, etc. So I suspect that Nvidia's research and development spending will continue. And if I was an owner of Nvidia stock, which I'm not, I have recommended Nvidia stock as one of my top stocks to buy all year long, but I don't own Nvidia stock. If I did, I would be encouraging Nvidia to spend more on research and development. And the reason being, they've been so successful here. They've developed so many innovative products and services that the results from this research and development spending is positive. So I would want them to do more. And companies like Nvidia that, generate good returns on their spending in research and development, I would want them to do more. And then there's companies where their research and development isn't leading to good results, and so I would want them to do less. Nvidia is one of those cases where I would want them to do more. More specifically, where the R&D spending went, management said it went to employee growth, compensation increases, and a $242 million increase in compute and infrastructure investments. Solid areas for where I would like to see Nvidia spend. Primarily, I would like to see growth in employee count. It's hard for Nvidia to find the type of talented employees that produce and engineer and develop their innovative products. If they can find more people, I would be happy with that if I was an Nvidia shareholder. Now, the company for the full year fiscal 2025, they expect operating expenses to grow in the low 40% range. And that's in stark contrast because its revenue in 2025 will grow by more than 100%. Fiscal year 2025, which for Nvidia is different than the calendar year. Okay, so I'm going to move on to talk about the dividend increase. Now, one of the things to keep in mind here as I talk about the dividend increase and the stock buyback third is the increase in Nvidia's cash flow from operations. You'll notice here year over year, Nvidia's cash flow from operations increased by more than 5x to 15.345 billion, up from 2.9 billion in the same quarter the prior year. So a huge surge in cash flow from operations. And what I just talked about first with research and development applies here, and that the company will have difficulty spending all of this money on the business or reinvesting all of this money on the business because the growth is so large and so fast that it would be difficult for Nvidia to ramp up investments in the business that quickly. And so it follows that Nvidia will likely return a lot more capital to shareholders through dividends and share repurchases. Let's look at dividends first. So on May 22nd, the company announced an increase of their quarterly cash dividend by 150%. That's a big increase in dividend, and companies are usually more hesitant to increase their dividends than they are to increase their stock buybacks, and I'll explain why that's the case in just a little bit. So they increased their dividends from 4 cents per share up to 10 cents per share of common stock. Now, why are companies more hesitant to increase their dividend than they are to increase buybacks? It's because dividends are seen by investors as more permanent, whereas buybacks are seen as more temporary, as more of one-off events and not something that is going to continue for the next 10, 20 years. Whereas investors, when they notice a company start paying a dividend, they start to expect that dividend for the long term. So when a company initiates a dividend or increases a dividend, investors expect that at the very least, the dividend will remain the same for several years, or more likely, they expect the dividend to continue to increase over the next several years and decades. So when you start up a dividend, and then 2 years later you pause or cancel your dividend or decrease your dividend, investors typically punish the stock price because they see this as a warning sign, as a caution sign that the company's prospects are worsening to such a degree that they need to save cash by cutting the dividend payment. And so companies hate to cut their dividend payment or pause their dividend payment. And so they will only start or increase their dividend when they feel extremely confident that they can maintain that dividend for a very long time. So that's why Nvidia increasing its cash dividend by 150% was a sign the company is quite confident in its long-term prospects. And finally, share buybacks. During the first quarter of fiscal 2025, the company repurchased 9.9 million shares of their stock for $8 billion. They spent $8 billion buying back shares. As of April 28, 2024, they are authorized to repurchase up to $14.5 billion more in common stock. The repurchase program aims to offset dilution from shares issued to employees. And since April 28th, so from April 29 to May 24, which will be in their second quarter that they have not yet reported on, they've already repurchased 2.3 million shares in just 1 month. So this would be on pace to purchase roughly 2/3 the amount of shares that they purchased in the first quarter. And so far they spent $2.1 billion in Q2. So for the same reasons, they are increasing their dividend. They've got a lot of cash flow from operations. They need to allocate it, and they're giving capital back to shareholders. And when companies buy back their shares, it reduces the total share count. So the existing net income is split among fewer shares, thereby increasing the earnings per share. So share buybacks have that benefit as well. So there you have it. These 3 things I thought Nvidia stock investors should know. It's the company's trying to keep pace with growing revenue by growing research and development expense. And then relatedly, the company's strong cash flow from operations is likely going to lead to increasing dividend payments and increasing stock buybacks. Did you know that over 90% of the people that watch my channel are not subscribed? It'll really help support my channel if you hit that subscribe button. And oh, by the way, one of the benefits of being subscribed is that I take requests from subscribers more often than I do from non-subscribers. So if you prefer that benefit, please subscribe.